morning, and good morning to you. There is a showdown happening in New Jersey over who should lead the U.S. Attorney's Office. President Trump wants Alina Habba in the post. She was given the job as a temporary appointee.
In recent days, a surprising legal and administrative conflict in the United States has drawn national attention, particularly in New Jersey, raising serious questions about the balance of power within the American legal system. At the center of this controversy is Alina Habba, close legal advisor and prominent attorney for former President Donald Trump. Her appointment and subsequent removals. Acting U.S. Attorney for New Jersey has sparked intense debate regarding the boundaries between political influence and constitutional authority. In March 2025, Alina Habba was appointed as the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey, under the Department of Justice's temporary powers. These types of appointments typically last up to 120 days and are often followed by a formal nomination process requiring Senate confirmation. Habba's appointment, however, quickly became controversial due to her well-known political ties to Donald Trump and her active legal defense of him in numerous high-profile cases following the SHT-20 presidential election. Given her close affiliation with Trump and her role in defending him during legal battles related to election fraud and other charges, her nomination was met with strong resistance from the Democratic majority Senate. Despite attempts by the administration to push her nomination through, the Senate refused to move forward with her confirmation, citing concerns about impartiality and the politicization of federal legal offices. As Habba's 120-day interim term neared its end, the situation took a legally significant turn. Under 28 U.S. Code Section 546D, if a U.S. attorney is not confirmed by the Senate within the acting period, federal district court judges have the authority to appoint a temporary replacement to avoid any gap in the leadership of the district's U.S. Attorney Office. Exercising this power, the judges of New Jersey's federal court appointed Desiree Lee Grace as the new interim U.S. Attorney. However, just days into her new role, Grace was also abruptly dismissed by the Department of Justice, reigniting concerns about whether these appointments and removals were constitutionally grounded or politically motivated. The back-to-back changes raised alarm bells among legal experts, political commentators, and even some lawmakers who viewed the developments as potential overreach by the executive branch or an effort to consolidate power in a key legal district. Critics argue that Habba's appointment was more about loyalty to Trump than legal merit, pointing to her limited experience in federal prosecution and her high-profile role in defending the former president. Her defenders, mainly from Republican circles, claim she was a qualified legal professional being targeted due to her political affiliations. The dismissal of Desiree Lee Grace, who had been legally appointed by federal judges in accordance with established law, added another layer of controversy. It raised constitutional questions about the limits of DOJ authority in countering judicial appointments and whether such dismissals undermine the judiciary's independent role in maintaining checks and balances within the federal legal system. Legal scholars have since weighed in on the unfolding drama, with some suggesting that the events in New Jersey could set a precedent for future conflicts between the judiciary and the executive regarding prosecutorial appointments. The question at the heart of the matter remains, were these appointments and removals legitimate exercises of legal authority? Or were they politically driven maneuvers aimed at influencing ongoing investigations and court proceedings? This situation underscores the fragility of the institutional norms that have historically governed the U.S. legal system. At a time when public trust in the judiciary and executive branches is already under strain, such actions risk further eroding confidence in the impartiality of justice. As of now, the Justice Department has not publicly commented in detail on the rationale behind its decisions, and both Republican and Democratic lawmakers are demanding greater transparency. Meanwhile, civil rights organizations and judicial watchdog groups have called for congressional oversight hearings to investigate the matter and ensure that future appointments follow both the letter and the spirit of the law. The events in New Jersey highlight a broader national concern: the increasing overlap of politics and justice. When legal institutions appear to be influenced by political agendas, the consequences can extend far beyond individual appointments, potentially affecting the fairness and integrity of the entire legal system. Whether the controversy surrounding Alina Habba and Desiree Lee Grace will result in long-term changes to appointment procedures or remain a cautionary tale of political overreach remains to be seen. However, one thing is clear. The battle over who gets to hold power in the U.S. Attorney's Office is more than just an administrative matter. It's a reflection of the ongoing struggle for control within America's democratic institutions. A dramatic and deeply troubling episode in New Jersey's federal justice system has ignited a nationwide conversation about the delicate balance between judicial authority and executive power in the United States. What initially appeared to be a routine change in leadership within the U.S. Attorney's Office has now evolved into a complex legal and political crisis, one that raises urgent questions about constitutional boundaries, political interference, and the very independence of democratic institutions. The controversy reached a boiling point when U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, acting on behalf of the Justice Department and widely seen as a staunch ally of former President Donald Trump, took the extraordinary step of overruling a judicial appointment made by federal judges in New Jersey. Specifically, Bondi dismissed Desiree Lee Grace, who had been legally appointed by the district court as an interim U.S. attorney after the expiration of the 120-day term of Alina Habba. Bondi did not merely reverse the appointment quietly, publicly criticized the judiciary's decision. According to her, the court had appointed someone who was performative, rather than effective, implying that Grace was more concerned with public perception than real legal outcomes. She claimed that her removal was necessary because Grace was interfering with efforts to restore law and order in New Jersey, framing the court's decision as politically motivated and counterproductive to federal prosecutorial objectives. This reaction, swift and aggressive, caught both legal scholars and political observers off guard. Bondi's decision not only defied the traditional boundaries of executive-judicial cooperation, but also raised critical constitutional questions that many fear could set a dangerous precedent for the future. At the center of the debate lies a constitutional and legal puzzle. Can the Department of Justice legally dismiss a U.S. attorney who was appointed by a federal court under clearly established statutory authority? More specifically, under 28 U.S. Code Section 546D, when the Senate fails to confirm a nominee for U.S. attorney, the district court is empowered to appoint an interim replacement to ensure continuity in prosecutorial leadership. Desiree Lee Grace was appointed in accordance with this very statute. Her appointment followed the expiration of the 120-day interim term held by Alina Habba, a Trump-affiliated attorney whose nomination was unable to advance in the Democrat-controlled Senate due to concerns about her political bias and lack of relevant prosecutorial experience. The Department of Justice's decision to remove Grace, therefore, is being interpreted by many as an infringement upon the judiciary's lawful powers and potentially a violation of the balance of powers that underpins the U.S. Constitution. If the executive branch can override judicial appointments at will, legal experts warn, it effectively strips courts of their ability to serve as an independent check on executive authority. The removal of Grace quickly ignited outrage in Congress, particularly among Democratic lawmakers. Both of New Jersey's Democratic Senators Cory and Andy Kim condemned the action in strong terms. They framed it not as an administrative decision, but as a deliberate political maneuver aimed at undermining judicial independence and punishing a career public servant for not aligning with the political preferences of the executive branch. In a joint statement, the senators declared, "This is more than just a personnel decision, a warning to all those who disagree with flawed government policy. The dismissal of Desiree Grace is a direct attack on judicial autonomy and a disturbing sign of political retaliation." This statement highlights the broader dimensions of the controversy. It is not merely about a single U.S. attorney's appointment or removal. but about the struggle for power among the three pillars of American democracy: the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative branches. The central question now dominating public discourse is whether the events in New Jersey represent legitimate constitutional action or an abuse of political power. Alina Habba's original appointment as interim U.S. attorney had already stirred controversy due to her close personal and professional ties to Donald Trump as one of his most vocal legal defenders, particularly in the aftermath of the 2020 election. Habba's loyalty to Trump made her a symbol of partisan legal advocacy. Although the president holds the constitutional right to nominate U.S. attorneys, such nominations must be confirmed by the Senate. When confirmation fails or is delayed, temporary appointments can be made. The Department of Justice can appoint an acting attorney for up to 120 days. Beyond that period, the law is clear. District court judges have the authority to fill the position until a Senate-confirmed replacement is found. This system is designed to maintain a balance of power, to ensure that no single branch can dominate the legal process unchecked. Yet, the moment that balance is disrupted for political purposes, it threatens the credibility and legitimacy of the entire legal system. The purpose of judicial appointments in such cases is to guard against executive overreach, especially when a nominee faces political controversy or lacks Senate support. The judiciary steps in to fill the vacuum, not as a political player, but as a stabilizing force intended to ensure the continuity of justice. Pam Bondi's intervention not only challenged this principle, shattered the precedent by forcibly removing a judge-appointed U.S. attorney. The DOJ signaled that even judicially endorsed legal authority is subject to executive override. Legal scholars argue that this raises the possibility of future U.S. attorneys being hired or fired solely on the basis of political loyalty, not competence or legal qualification. In response to these developments, legal watchdog organizations, former federal prosecutors, and civil liberties advocates have all sounded the alarm. Many are calling for congressional oversight hearings and potential judicial review. They argue that if left unchecked, this incident could reshape the norms surrounding interim legal appointments across the federal system, emboldening future administrations to push political allies into sensitive legal positions without regard for legislative or judicial input. At the same time, the White House has shown no signs of backing down from its support for Alina Habba. Despite Senate resistance, the administration continues to push for her confirmation, an outcome that appears increasingly unlikely given the current political landscape. Still, this unwavering stance suggests that the administration is willing to engage in a prolonged legal and political battle to cement its position. If this tug-of-war continues, it may trigger broader consequences across the federal judiciary. Lawmakers are already discussing possible reforms to make the interim appointment process more transparent and better protected from political manipulation. Some proposals include limiting the Attorney General's power to override judicial appointments or strengthening the legal framework to ensure that interim prosecutors remain independent and neutral. These discussions reflect a growing consensus that the current system may not be robust enough to withstand increasing politicization, especially in an era when the line between law and politics is becoming dangerously blurred. At its core, the Alina Habba controversy is not simply about one woman, one office, or even one political party. It is about the structural health of American democracy and the strength of its constitutional institutions. It is a test of whether the legal system can maintain its integrity when placed under intense political pressure, and whether the United States remains committed to the rule of law, even when it conflicts with partisan interests. The crisis unfolding in New Jersey may ultimately be remembered not for the personalities involved, but for what it revealed about the fragility of institutional norms, the erosion of bipartisan cooperation, and the growing willingness of political actors to test the limits of constitutional power. As the situation evolves, all eyes remain on Washington and the courts, whether through judicial intervention, legislative reform, or political compromise. The resolution of this conflict could help define the future of federal legal appointments for years to come. But regardless of the outcome, one fact is inescapable. The battle over Alina Habba's appointment has laid bare the urgent need to reassess the safeguards meant to preserve judicial independence, constitutional checks and balances, and the public's faith in the justice system. In the coming years, the events in New Jersey could serve either as a blueprint for reform or a cautionary tale of unchecked political interference. What is clear, however, is that the story does not end with one removal or one nomination. It continues to echo across the corridors of power, where the fight for democratic accountability is far from over. Subscribe our YouTube channel for more update.